name is Cristina Alfaro. I am the Associate Vice President of International Affairs at San Diego State University and Executive Director of the Center for Equity and Biliteracy Education Research, CEBER. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to learn about the PIQE 2024 Longitudinal Academic Impact Report. This report includes both quantitative and qualitative data that reflects the powerful impact of a strategic, culturally responsive, well-thought-out family education and engagement program. In my 35 plus years as a scholar and educational leader, it is clear to me that family, caregiver, parent quality education plays a critical role in disrupting cycles of generational inequity. I would like to share a couple of highlights from this critical report. First of all, this study conducted by the Center for Equity and Biliteracy Education Research, CEBER, at San Diego State University confirms the long-term academic benefits of PIQE's signature family engagement program. In this study, we found that students whose family participated in the PIQE Signature Family Engagement Program had a 91% high school graduation rate, outperforming both state and national averages. This is impressive, given that the national high school graduation rate stands at 87%, closely mirroring California's rate of 86.4%. Again, students from PIQE graduates had a 91% high school graduation rate. This is outstanding. Today, you will have the opportunity to explore the full report and see how family engagement makes a measurable difference in the academic and personal life trajectories of students and their families. It is clear from both the qualitative and quantitative data that parents, family caregivers consider PIQE the gold standard of equity and excellence in education. Parents, family, caregivers articulated time and time again that the Signature Family Education Program helped them to understand the critical interconnectedness of home, school, and community. Furthermore, parent, family, caregiver graduates shared how their new and expanded knowledge helped them braid their self-identity with respect to their personal and professional growth beyond their child's academic success and college-going culture. Altogether in this study, we found that PIQE's Family Engagement Program profoundly breaks the cycle of generational, racial, and gender inequity in terms of academic, personal, and professional outcomes. I highly encourage educators at all levels and throughout the nation to study this report to examine how they prioritize the importance of parent-family caregiver engagement, and to use this report as a springboard to collectively ensure that culturally responsive family engagement practices continue to drive equitable outcomes for the communities we have the privilege to serve. Thank you.
We conducted the data collection here. We did quantitative and qualitative, as Dr. Alfaro mentioned. This was the first report of its kind here at PIQE where we have included parent voice, and so it was amazing to be on the data collection side, talking to the parents. We also had the opportunity to build capacity here within the organization. I worked with a research team of some of our associate directors, and Carlos, our director of operations, was instrumental. Also, our data team led by Deborah Lugo. So amazing team here in order to be able to talk to over 1,000 parents, right? I think, what did we end? We ended up with 1,250 children represented in the report and 1,047 parents. And then we talked to 122 parents participated in our qualitative follow-up. So some amazing findings that our amazing Dr. Maldonado is going to now present to us. So thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Saul Maldonado. I have the privilege of being one of 3 colleagues that contributed to this report. You heard from Dr. Cristina Alfaro. You didn't hear from Belia Huerta, and then I have the privilege of sharing on behalf of the team. Thank you to all PIQE team members, Dr. Escobedo, Elizabeth Cabrera, Carlos Robledo, folks that were behind the scenes partnering with us along the way. It's a lot of information, a lot of emails, and a lot of work goes into preparing a study of this nature. And most importantly, I want to thank the families that contributed to these surveys and these interviews, and really gave us the opportunity to share some notes for you all. So today I'm honored to present an overview of the Longitudinal Academic Impact Report. It examines long-term academic outcomes, as you all have heard, for families that participated in this program in middle schools and high schools from 2012 to 2017. And it's a signature family engagement program that takes place over 8 weeks. And so that's really what we're going to talk about here. How did this 8-week program become associated with some of these findings? And that's the purpose of this presentation. The sampling technique enabled the inclusion of 1,047 participants that graduated from this program, and they were surveyed via telephone calls. They were surveyed in conversations, and they were asked questions not just about high school, but high school and beyond. And the importance of longitudinal studies is that you get a more robust picture, because things take time, and taking different measures along the way is important, and for those of us that do work in assessment. Quick side note, American Evaluation Association is one of the places where I also work in addition to San Diego State, and there what we discuss is, what does quality mean to a community? And here, what quality means here is not just the effectiveness or the achievement, but it's also the appropriateness and the respect. So it's effectiveness and appropriateness, and this is what we saw in this data. And I think that respect really comes in with these survey respondents that were asked, can we use your information for reporting and publication? And not all family organizations do that. So when we do this work with community partners, we're really proud to have partnered with PIQE, because you all have that kind of cultural sensitivity in how you work with family members. And this isn't just something that happened in one region in California. So this is a statewide study, and this is so important because this is happening statewide, and it's happening in a multilingual way. And I think that many family serving organizations don't have that expertise and that infrastructure in making sure that you all know that that's important, and that you all are doing appropriate and respectful work through a multilingual study is something to be celebrated. To echo Gloria's comments earlier, this is a celebration. And so tracking students over several years is a lot of work, and it shows in its results. So when you all asked the families, and we were asked, well, what is it exactly that I'm taking away from this program? And the family caregivers, the parents, said, I'm really taking away information on the financial aid conversations, this awareness around what does this look like, what does it need to be in terms of conversations with not just educators, but as well as my own students and my own children. And so that's one of them. The other is A through G requirements. For those of us that are educators, we have a lot of jargon, a lot of terminology, and having a space where family members can be coached and supported in the meaning making of these acronyms and processes is important. And that's what parents shared as kind of, if I had to distill it to one or two concepts, what is most important to me, what's most impactful to me, this is what family members said. And it's not just what family members reported, but also what did they do with that information? And what they do with that information is they communicate. And so with the survey findings, which are quantitative findings, they start communicating with their children, and they start having conversations with their children, coupled with educators. Our children and I are talking, and we want to speak to a counselor. Or I spoke with your counselor, with or without your permission, and now I want to ask you about your A through G's. How do you know about that? A through G, mom, dad, abuelita. And so these are the conversations that these family caregivers are doing at a 56%. So that's more than half of the participants. So we're talking about 500 families that are directly connected to doing something, advancing what they're learning in their own homes and with their own families. So I'll read some words from Dr. Alfaro, and I'll channel Dr. Alfaro here because Dr. Alfaro, being the vice president of a university, and myself and Belia Huerta, our colleagues, we have to be very selective about who we close down shop for. And so all of Thanksgiving, the office was closed. Most of Christmas break, the office was closed so that we could do this work. And so Dr. Alfaro says that this report offers compelling evidence that culturally and linguistically responsive family engagement has a measurable impact on student achievement. And these findings provide long-term data for policymakers, educators, and institutions to reimagine how we support students, centering families as essential partners. And so on to the next slide, please. One of these findings is this high school graduation rate, which you've heard consistently all across today's presentation. And it's a key finding. This 91% high school graduation rate is important. 9 out of 10. In some communities that are represented here, that might be 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. But here in this statewide sample, we have 9 out of 10. As Dr. Ochoa said, is that enough? Are we satisfied? We're not. We want 10 out of 10. But 9 out of 10 is, I think, a great celebration, as you heard earlier. Especially because this is not just a local regional sample, but this is a statewide sample, and you heard which types of schools PIQE partners with, or which types of school communities PIQE partners with. And furthermore, it doesn't just end there. In the next slide, we start to see that story, and this is the value of the longitudinal approach, that the story continues, and it is now something that is being documented with community colleges, with universities, with vocational training. We're seeing some trends here that you all are learning about here at PIQE that should instill great pride and joy for what you all are doing with this one program. We didn't measure all programs, we're just looking at this one program. And so this story, I think, is a reminder to all of us that it's never too early to start. So if family members can be visited again and say, like, hey, how about now? It's never too early to start, and it's always too soon to quit. So I think these reminders of, like, hey, how are your children doing? That's important for these types of higher education outcomes, which is the second key finding. In the next slide, we have some slides that share examples of how the interviews were used to answer the final guiding question. In what ways, if any, have your own academic and or professional opportunities changed after completing this workshop? And a quick note about this process, as you heard, over 100 audio and video recordings. That's a lot. That's a lot of information to print out and put in a large table like this and to start coding. Some notes about the coding. So observations, comments, quotes, they were categorized in alignment with the curriculum themselves, and that's how codes were created. And importantly, these are self-reflection accounts. These aren't observations. These are participants sharing their own stories of their responses to the guiding question. And 4 central themes were identified: knowledge, motivation, community, and communication confidence. And in the next 4 slides, I will share participant statements in their own words. And for audiences that are not Spanish speakers yet, English translations are available in the slides. Knowledge. Como padre de familia, me abrió el panorama académico para navegar los resultados AAG para llegar a la universidad. Esto nos impactó a toda la familia. Yo y mi esposa empezamos un negocio para ayudar a mis hijos a pagar los costos de colegio. En la siguiente diapositiva, which is motivation, the quote reads as follows: Las clases de PIQE me dieron la motivación para superar como madre en un país extranjero. Conocí cómo ayudarle y motivar a mi hija. Ella ya está en la universidad. Eso también me motivó a trabajar fuera de mi casa, algo que nunca me imaginé. In the next slide, community. Pues yo ya me gradué de PIQE, and I just remember this participant so well. Pues yo ya me gradué de PIQE 3 veces en diferentes regiones porque me gusta estar en comunidad con otros padres de familia. Ahí está en poder. And I'll read here another one that's in English. With what I learned from PIQE, I was able to help families and students that are undocumented. Lastly, confidence. Sé hablar mejor con mis hijos, empujarles a seguir adelante, platicar con los maestros. Antes me daba pena. Yo tengo derecho de preguntar cómo van mis hijos. Ya no soy cerrada. Soy indígena, soy multilingüe y yo ya no tengo pena. Esto me impactó la confianza en mí misma. And so for closing remarks, I want to take a quick pause here to say that what you all are doing is culturally and linguistically responsive. And so when I mentioned appropriateness, one way to consider this moving forward is through cultural and linguistic responsiveness. And you all have prioritized monitoring. This is important. So with a research evidence-based practice, you all can impact policy making and community building with a very particular lens. And most importantly, you can invite community members to say, are we doing this in the way that most accurately, most respectfully represents you? Is our approach respectful? So this is something that you all are doing, and we would encourage you, on behalf of CEBER, we would encourage you all to continue to prioritize this monitoring with multiple measures like interviews and surveys and so on. And as you heard from Dr. Alfaro, this is impressive work. So there's pride here. There's a lot to celebrate here, because you're not just measuring the academic achievement. A lot of community groups, a lot of family serving community groups, they focus on the achievement, those high school graduation markers. But you all are also taking a look at, well, are we doing this in a respectful way, in a linguistically appropriate way? And so you're also asking about the parents and the family caregivers themselves. Well, how did this experience impact you? It's not just about the student. It's also about you. What else is takeaway for you? And I already said my statement about quality. For you all, it's achievement, and it's also appropriateness, or it's also effectiveness, and it's also respect. But I think these are inseparable. You can't be effective without doing it appropriately. And you can't do it, if you're doing it appropriately, then you should expect that kind of academic excellence or achievement. And there we'll end with saying that this work is happening at schools, but it's getting a glimpse of families. And so my recommendation here would be, well, how can you all have more information on what's happening in those homes and in those family communities settings? Could you potentially have some conversations there as well? So it's not just school specific, but also family and community. And so for folks that are in the press, what we hope you all can take away from this report is that this is an opportunity to go to your local school districts, to use some of these findings and say, this is what we're finding. Why isn't our graduation rate for English learners in the 90%? Like, why are we having these kind of monitoring systems for higher education participation associated with our district? Why are we not monitoring information around linguistic diversity in the higher education setting? So you all can advocate in that way. And in my last 20 seconds, I would say, the most important stories are the stories from the participants themselves. And you are about to hear some of those statements from the storytellers of this study, and we're honored to hear from them in their personal narratives. And we hope that you all can amplify those narratives to continue advocating for more equitable and just policies. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Dr. Monique Escobedo and Dr. Maldonado. And now I have the pleasure of introducing both Janice and Janet, that they share their personal journeys and experiences with PIQE.
So let me introduce to you one of our parent graduates. This is Janet Herrera. The other Janet was her daughter, but she's doing some AP exam, so
She's where she
that's why
needs
that's why she's not here.
Está bien.
Janet is going to tell us a little bit about her experience with PIQE. She has taken the Bridge to College workshop, the SEL workshop, and family engagement, all of them twice. Cuéntanos un poco, and I'm going to be translating. Cuéntanos un poquito de tu experiencia en PIQUE.
Bueno, antes que nada, mucho gusto a todos. Una disculpa, mi hija tuvo su examen y la verdad es que es bien importante. Entonces, bueno, ella hubiese querido estar aquí porque ella también quería contar su experiencia. Yo conocí PIQUE en el 2022. Primero tomé el taller de Family Engagement. Nosotros tenemos 8 años en los Estados Unidos y toda mi vida estudiantil fue en México, entonces yo la verdad no tenía absolutamente ningún conocimiento de cómo era el sistema escolar aquí.
So she's been in the US for 8 years. She first took the family engagement program. She had no idea of the school system in the United States because she had been studying in Mexico all her life.
Entonces, por mucho tiempo yo apoyaba a mis hijos ayudándolos en la casa y fue involucramiento pasivo. No me involucraba tanto en la escuela porque no me sentía confiada, no tenía ningún conocimiento de la escuela.
So for a long time I helped my kids. I was involved passively with my kids because I didn't feel comfortable with them. I didn't have any knowledge and I didn't feel comfortable helping them at school.
Cuando yo tomo el taller de involucramiento familiar, entendí cuál es la importancia de la conexión de la escuela, los padres y los hijos, y que esta tríada es súper importante para que un hijo sea exitoso académicamente.
So when I took the family engagement workshop, I understood how important it was to be involved, parents and children together, to be involved so that the student can really succeed academically.
Puedo, ahorita que escuchaba los números que dijo el doctor Maldonado, se me hace gracioso, pero es verdad, y yo les puedo contar el lado de padres. Yo, a partir de que tomé el taller, me he sentido sumamente empoderada como madre, pero también como familia.
So as I was listening to Dr. Maldonado, the numbers seem funny, but it is true. I can say that as I took the workshops, I felt empowered as a mother, but also as a family.
Nosotros como familia comprobado que la información nos da el poder, y no nada más a nosotros como familia, sino como comunidad.
We are witness that information gives us power or empowers us, not just as family, but also as a community.
Yo no me involucraba en la escuela, ahora tengo grupos de madres que nos unimos para hacer una comunidad y poder apoyar a nuestros hijos.
Okay. I wasn't involved in school before, and now I am part of groups of parents or mothers that get together to support our kids.
En la parte emocional, pude yo particularmente y personalmente romper barreras de lo que yo tenía de mi cultura y de mi infancia, de lo que era el involucramiento familiar.
Okay. In the emotional part, like in the SEL workshops, taught her to break patterns of what she grew up with and what she brought from her family growing up and culturally also.
Puedo también decirles que hemos estado en la parte de atrás de cómo es que se ha llevado la educación de nuestros hijos, pero nunca dejándolos solos. Ellos han entendido ahora que nosotros siempre vamos a estar de la mano y detrás de ellos y siempre apoyándolos, y que el involucramiento, aparte de dar amor, también da soporte moral para ellos, que ellos pueden hacerlo.
Okay. So we have been behind, like, the backbone of our kids' education, but they now understand that we're always going to be there, and that parents' engagement is not just a way of showing love, but also of supporting them. They know now that we are always going to be there whenever they need it as a moral support, but that they're able to do it themselves too.
Puedo también decirles que
para nosotros como familia tuvo un impacto significativo para mí como persona, para mis hijos como unidad familiar, pero para la comunidad también. Yo he cambiado muchas cosas que antes no hacía, como involucrarme en la parte de PTO de la escuela o estar más asociada con las situaciones que pasan en la escuela de mis hijos.
So it changed a lot for their family, for her as a mother, and also as a community. She's now more involved in the PTO and other groups that help her kids' education in the community.
Y me he dado cuenta y soy fiel creyente que cuando como personas nos empoderamos a la comunidad, y principalmente nosotros como una comunidad latina donde muchas veces pensamos que la educación es algo que a lo mejor no tenemos derecho, pero en realidad tenemos derecho y todo el mundo tiene derecho y sí se puede.
Okay, I have found out that when we empower ourselves, we empower our communities. And speaking as a Latina community, sometimes we think that we don't have the right to education, but we really do have the right, and it is possible.
Y bueno, les podría decir muchísimas cosas y quedarme aquí mucho tiempo y platicarles todo lo que ha impactado en mi familia y en nuestra comunidad escolar de donde yo pertenezco, pero yo creo que lo mejor que les puedo dejar es que el programa funciona, que definitivamente toca la vida de cada persona que lo toma. Mi hija ahorita entró precisamente a San Diego State. Estamos muy orgullosos como familia, pero ahora sabemos que viene más allá y la estamos empoderando todavía más también.
I could stay here for a very long time talking about my experiences, but I can tell you that the program does work. It impacts everyone who's in the program, and she is very proud to say that her daughter was just accepted into SDSU, and that they will continue empowering her, and they know that it's going to be stronger. She's going to need more support now.
Muchas
We can talk about statistics, we can give you the methodology, we can talk about the policy wonkishness of what educational equity is. That's what I do. That's what I think about. But hearing Janet's story and her testament of how and why our work matters, I think really brings the findings to life. We are talking and touching people. We are enabling families to do what every parent wants to do, which is ensure that their children themselves have access to a better future. So, mil gracias, Janet. Usted y su familia es una inspiración. Gracias por estar aquí y gracias a ustedes vemos el impacto que tenemos en la comunidad y con las familias.
Gracias.
Así que
a
muchas
ustedes por el
gracias.
trabajo que hacen.
Gracias. And so with that, we close our time together and we welcome an opportunity to ask questions, to engage with our distinguished speakers. Ya hemos terminado. Si hay alguna pregunta, algún comentario de ustedes, we're opening it up for questions.
And I'm just really proud of PIQE for elevating the participant voices and bringing that into this impact report. And I know that will continue in years to come. So kudos to the team. And I don't have any questions, but I think my biggest reflection is if we could all just think about wherever we're located in terms of our positionality, what we do in our communities and in our professional roles, if we could continue to think of how we're all ambassadors of PIQE and the work that PIQE promotes. And I think that's my biggest reflection is as everyone was talking, I thought about all the ways in which we need to connect people so that this work can continue to grow and have that continued impact. So thank you.
Dr. Escobedo and Dr. Maldonado, what was kind of an aha moment when you moved through this study and this work? What was something maybe that stood out to you that you went, oh my God, and that was enlightening to you want to share with us?
So a lot of times, a study of this magnitude is done on communities, not with communities. Mm-hmm. And for us, the methodological decision for this organization to do this through an interview type format for a survey is very, very unique. And it's very complex, and it makes the work on researchers very, very difficult, because then we have to code this information because it's qualitative and we have to make it numeric. But I think the greatest aha is that the work was done in partnership, in true partnership with families through a conversation. And it also allowed those of you all that are more familiar to interpret the responses from family members. And so I would say that that's my major aha.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that being part of the team that was able to actually talk to the parents. So, you know, we have, as director of research, I have combed through the previous reports. I know people here have gone through the reports and seen the numbers, but when we hear voices from families, and we're intentional about asking how this programming helped them, as you saw in some of the testimonies that were excerpts of the testimonies that were shared, and several of them, and I know that the research team heard this too when they listened, were like, wait, me? You know, because they're so used to thinking about their children as good parents and caregivers do. And so when they had a chance to self-reflect on their own experiences, and as we heard, you know, the empowerment, and hear from Janet, the empowerment that they feel, the inspiration that they feel, and then just the way that they were able to grow and develop in a new way alongside of their children, and their children respected them as partners in this process, because they would say before, they would tell me, no, don't go to school because you don't understand what's happening, or no, I'm embarrassed for you to go to school, Mom, because whatever reason, or Dad, right? And they just are confident in a new way. They're self-actualized in a new way that I'm not sure that they didn't know could happen, but they maybe didn't know how to tap into it. And so that it was just amazing to be able to be part of the people talking to them, and hearing them. So thank you. Yeah.
Just hearing the testimony and hearing the reports, in my own lack of knowledge, obviously it sounds like this program works and has a positive impact. I guess I'm wondering, what are your challenges in trying to get it to more parents, I guess? What makes it difficult to have more parents? Because obviously when parents find out about it, they see that this would be something good for their families.
Sure. So great question, you know, and we think long and hard about how best to answer that. So there's, I think, two really important, I would say, challenges that we face. One is the leadership that it takes at the school and at the district. There's a very intentional commitment that this is a partnership. We approach the school principal, we approach the school superintendent and administrators, offering a partnership. There needs to be the collaborating part in that partnership. And so sometimes that presents a challenge because there's too many things on their plate, they're overworked, understaffed, right? And or sometimes the value that they place in making these investments is something they may not see. If they're an elementary school principal, they may not see it until high school graduation, right? And so one is that challenge of really having some of our education partners understand that the investment is long-term and the benefit is long-term. And so that's one challenge, is sort of the education leadership system part of it. The other, quite frankly, is funding, right? We are honored that we have philanthropic donors, we have people investing in us, schools, of course. But I think one thing that you heard is that the intentionality with which we do our work means that we have to have the resources to do it at the highest quality level. And that takes time, that takes money, that takes commitment. You know, when so the challenge is really is funding, resources. One thing for you to know, as a lifelong educator, policy person, is that in the way that schools get funded, investing in family engagement is literally the last checkbox that school districts and schools need to do. So oftentimes what that means is that $100 are set aside, or $500 are set aside for coffees with the principal, or, you know, a community event, right? Well, this is not a $500 investment, right? And so I think that from a policy standpoint, sort of the commitment of resources to ensure that these kinds of effective practices get embedded in the school system tend to be a barrier. We're grateful and continue to ask others to continue to invest in us, so our philanthropic partners, our donors, individuals, all of you, but certainly you heard from Joe Lara, who was our educator, that when they see the impact, they are lifelong advocates, right? They are lifelong champions because they believe that family, educator, partnership is what ensures that student outcomes, which is why people go into it teaching, is because they want to change the lives of children, right? That's where the power is. So as we think about sort of why we do this study, and I was going to share the anecdote that, so I've been here 6.5 years, and as I said, I'm a policy wonk, and Dr. Ochoa was our chair at the time, and I said, Dr. Ochoa, the foundation, having done 2 longitudinal studies, means that before, if I'm here, that we need to be thinking about what this next chapter will be. We didn't have funding for it, right? People weren't stepping up. No one was saying, here, I'll spend money to do that, right? But I think for us, it's our responsibility, our moral obligation to be able to look at Janet and the 30,000 families that we serve and say, your time with us matters. And it matters because it impacts you, it impacts your most valuable asset, which is your children, and the dreams that you have for your children and for yourself. So for me, that sort of, despite the barriers and the obstacles, I think our commitment to doing research, to sharing it with our colleagues, is because tengo que ver a Janet, a la señora Janet, y decirle, valió la pena. Impactó su trayectoria educacional, de sus hijos, de usted. That's why we're here.